As I already explained in the previous video, the Baccaratinians arrived on Earth 1,350,000 years ago. 30,000 years later came the terrible cataclysm that gouged out seas and caused the emergence of islands and even continents. I made mention also of an enormous continent which arose in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This continent was called La Mar, but is better known to you as the continent of Mu. It emerged virtually in one piece, to be shattered 2,000 years later by seismic shock into three principal continents. With the passing of years, vegetation established on these continents, large areas of which were located in equatorial regions. Grass grew, forests established, and, gradually, animals migrated across the very narrow isthmus that bound Mu to North America. The yellow race that had better managed to come to terms with the disastrous consequences of the cataclysm were first to construct ships and explore the seas. About 300,000 Earth years ago, they landed on the northwest coast of Mu, where they eventually founded a small colony. This colony barely grew over the course of centuries, as there were difficulties in expatriating, which would take too long to explain and which does not concern us now. About 250,000 Earth years ago, the inhabitants of planet Aremo X3 embarked on an interplanetary voyage of exploration penetrating your solar system. After having skirted Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury, they landed on the planet Earth in China, where their spacecraft caused considerable panic among the populace. Their legends refer to fire dragons descending from the sky. The fear and mistrust of the Chinese led them eventually to attack the aliens, who were forced to use violence in order to defend themselves. This they hated, for they were not only technologically advanced, but also highly spiritual people who abhorred killing. They moved on, continuing their exploration of the planet. It turned out that the continent of Mu had most appeal for them for two main reasons. First, the continent appeared to be virtually uninhabited, and second, by virtue of its latitude, it was a veritable paradise. They had become particularly cautious since their confrontation with the Chinese, and felt it would be wise to establish a base to which they could retreat, should they encounter further hostilities of a serious nature from Earth people. I have not yet explained that their reason for exploring Earth was their intention of resettling several million people from Aremo X3, a planet that was becoming uncomfortably overpopulated. This operation was much too serious to take risks of any kind. Thus, it was decided that their base of retreat would be set up, not on Earth, but on the Moon, which was quite close and considered very safe. 50 years were spent establishing the lunar bases, and it wasn't until they were ready that emigration to Mu began. All went well. The small Chinese colony that had existed in the northwest of Mu had been totally destroyed some decades after their first visit, so, in effect, they had the entire continent to themselves. Work began immediately on the construction of towns, canals, and roads, which they paved with immense flagstones. Their usual means of transport was a flying chariot. From their planet, they imported animals such as the dog and the armadillo, which they were very partial to on Aremo X3, and also the pig. In height, these people averaged 180 centimeters for the males and 160 centimeters for the females. Their hair was dark, their eyes of a beautiful black, and their skin lightly bronzed. I believe you have already guessed them to be the ancestors of the Polynesians. So they established settlements throughout the length and breadth of the continent, including 19 large cities, 7 of which were sacred. Small villages were also numerous, for these people were highly skilled farmers and graziers. Their political system was modeled on that of Aremo X3. They had long ago discovered that the only way to govern a country properly was to place at the head of government 7 men of integrity, representing no political party, but sincerely committed to doing what they could for their nation. The 7th among them was the supreme judge, whose vote on council was worth 2. If 4 were against him, and 2 with him on a particular issue, they were at deadlock, and hours or days of debate would ensue, until at least one of the 7 was persuaded to change his vote. This debate was conducted within a context of intelligence, love, and concern for the people. These high figures received no great material benefits for leading the nation. It was their vocation to lead, and they did it for the love of serving their country. This avoided the problem of hiding opportunists among the leaders. The same can't be said of our national leaders now. And where were such men found? The procedure was as follows. In a village or district, a man of integrity was elected by referendum. No one with a record of bad conduct or a tendency towards fanaticism could be chosen. The chosen one would have demonstrated integrity in all spheres. He would then be sent to the nearest town, along with other representatives from neighboring villages, and there further elections would be held. For example, if there were 60 villages, there would be 60 men elected by the people for their integrity, and not for promises which they made, but couldn't keep. Representatives from all over the nation would meet together in the capital city. They would be divided into groups of 6, and each group assigned a particular conference room. For the next 10 days, the group would be together, holding discussions, sharing meals, enjoying shows, and, eventually, they would elect a group leader. So, if there had been 60 representatives divided into 10 groups, there would be 10 group leaders. Of these 10, 7 would be elected by the same process, and from the 7, an eventual supreme leader would emerge. He was given the title of king. The king was elected in this way only if his predecessor died without having nominated a successor, or if the successor was not unanimously accepted by the Council of 7. He was given the title of king, first because he was the representative on earth of the Great Spirit, and second, because 9 times out of 10, he would be the son or near relative of the preceding king. If this king manifested the slightest tendency towards dictatorship, he was overthrown by his council of peers. But let's go back now to our emigrants from Aremo 6-3. Their capital city, given the name Savanassa, was situated on a plateau overlooking the Gulf of Suvatu. The plateau was 300 meters high, and, except for 2 hills, one in the southwest and one in the southeast, this was the highest point on the continent of Mu. Now, some people may have this question. When I explained the cataclysm which knocked the Earth off its axis, I said that refuge on the moon was not possible because it didn't exist. And yet now, I say that safety bases were established on the moon for these emigrants. It is because there was no moon at the time when the blacks populated Australia, or for a very long time afterwards. There had been 2 very small moons much earlier, about 6 million years ago, which revolved around Earth, eventually colliding with it. Earth was not inhabited at the time, so, although terrible cataclysms followed, it didn't really matter. About 500,000 years ago, Earth captured a much larger moon, the one which exists now. It was passing too close to our planet and was attracted into an orbit. This often happens with moons. Further catastrophes were provoked by this event. What does it mean when I say passing too close to Earth? Why didn't it crash? And anyway, what is a moon? It could have crashed indeed, but that doesn't often happen. A moon is originally a small planet revolving around its sun in a spiral that becomes increasingly tight. The smaller planets spiral more rapidly than the larger ones, because their inertial force is less. Their spiral being faster, the smaller planets often catch up to the larger planets, and, if they pass too closely, the gravitational attraction of the planet will be stronger than that of the Sun. The smaller planet begins to orbit the larger one, still in a spiral, which will sooner or later result in a collision. Some might ask, are you suggesting that our beautiful moon, celebrated in poems and songs, will one day fall on our heads? One day, yes, but not for about 195,000 years. When that happens, when the moon collides with the Earth, that will be the end of our planet. If the people of Earth are not sufficiently spiritually and technologically advanced at the time, it will mean a holocaust. But if they are, they will have evacuated to another planet. Everything in its time, though.